Hello, everyone, and welcome to Trent University's virtual open house. My name is Kara Walsh. I am Communications and Media Relations Officer here at Trent University. I'm a proud Trent alumna, and I'm very, very pleased to be playing the role of moderator for the history academic session today. With me today, I am joined by Dr. Robert Wright, Professor of History here at Trent and focused primarily at Trent University, Durham, as well as three wonderful students from our program. We're joined by Grace Chapnick. Grace is a fourth-year history student from our Peterborough campus. Andrea Chand is a fourth-year English major with a minor in history, also taking part in our teacher education stream at Trent. And then Griffin Caldwell is also a student who is joining us today. So we will start our session with a bit of an overview with Robert. In just a moment, I will go through some housekeeping items. And then at the end, we have a wonderful opportunity for you all to hear from students who are in this program. I just want to acknowledge that today is a great moment on a very exciting path that you have ahead of you as you head off to university throughout the day. As if you're joining us just now, or if you've been in a few sessions already, we're looking forward to sharing all of the reasons that Trent University is a leader in undergraduate studies and why we've been the #1 undergraduate university in Ontario for 11 years in a row. During the session, as I mentioned, we will have a question and answer period at the end. So I encourage you to populate your questions into the chat, or if you are feeling brave, you can also unmute yourself and ask your questions at the end of the session. But we can address those questions at the end. Sakib, is it okay if I ask you to mute your microphone? I might be able to mute you just for a moment. We'll allow you to unmute yourself shortly. And I also wanted to mention that today's presentation is offered with closed captioning. To enable closed captioning, please, if you want to click on the 3 dots at the bottom right of your screen, and you can select show subtitles so that you're able to experience the session that way. On the main virtual open house events page, you'll see a few live chat sessions where you can have any of your questions answered. We have students who are populating answers into the chat. With that said, I might sneak in this question from Sakib before we jump into, I just see your hand up, Sakib. Did you have a question before we start?
Hello.
Hello, did you have a question before we begin?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, did you want, is it a question about navigating, or is it a question about the program could we address it at the end?
I'm an international student and how to apply Trent University.
Sakib, I'm having problems hearing you on your microphone. If you could populate your question into the chat, then we can address it in the Q&A at the end, if that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much. So with that said, I will turn over, as I had mentioned, we will start with a bit of an information session with Robert at the start, and then open to question and answer. So I will turn the microphone and the stage over to Robert now.
Thanks, Kara. Welcome, everybody. I'm happy to place myself at anyone's disposal now or later, or if there's anybody not attending, if you have friends and comrades interested in history at Trent before, and just in case I forget to announce this toward the end, we're all very, very easy to access. I speak for my colleagues here. If you want specific information about specific decisions about courses and trajectories, particularly for history majors, we are all very much at your disposal and happy to chat in this forum, but also in others. I thought what I would do is spend 5 or 10 minutes summarizing what I think would be issues of foremost concern for students coming likely for the first time to Trent. I'll just start with what historians do, because this is a question that I get often. The main, I can't speak for other disciplines, but the main difference between history as you've been taught it in secondary school, for example, and what happens in university is that the people teaching in universities are primarily researchers, which means that we're doing the actual work of studying, hopefully with originality and creativity, the past in ways that are to some greater or lesser degree bundled into secondary school curricula and other fora, mass media, and so on. So the first thing about studying history at university is to realize that you'll be in the presence of mostly cutting edge thinking on what kinds of issues obtain in the past, and also how the past informs the present. In your typical first year and even second year course as a Trent history major, you will attend a lecture of 1 or 2 hours, and almost certainly do an additional hour in a seminar, or what we call a tutorial, which is a small breakout group, almost never more than 15 or 20 students, designed to be the place to discuss in a more focused and slightly less formal way the themes of readings and lectures as you get them week to week. All of the historians at Trent are specialists in at least one area, but one of the nice features of the history department is that most of us are what I refer to as dilettantes. What that means is that we have very far-reaching interests, research interests, teaching interests. And that means that if you look at the profile of faculty at the Trent History Department, you can see either expressly or you can imagine that fields not explicitly covered are sometimes tangentially covered or implicitly covered by our 13 or 14 full-time historians. So for a relatively small university, it's a relatively large history department, and it's a full service history department. Just about every aspect of history from the medieval period forward, with a special emphasis on the North Atlantic world, is covered very, very well. The other thing I would mention is that my home base, my full-time home base, Kara was right to mention this, is the Trent Durham campus in Oshawa. I've been there for, gosh, I hate to say it, almost 40 years. And it is a place it is a place where you can now do a full-blown history degree on campus. So what I'm getting at is there are some subjects that lend themselves well to a two-campus Trent experience, where you start out, I think biology is always the best example of this, where you start out doing bio on our campus and you complete your upper year courses and ultimately your degree on the Peterborough campus. But history is taught in such a way, courses are offered and staggered and scheduled in such a way that history majors can complete the entirety of history degrees on the Durham campus, which is really great if you live anywhere in the GTA. The calendar, I don't need to speak much about the calendar. You can go there, consult the calendar. You can take a look at the kinds of courses that are offered, how they're organized. Most in the early years, first and second year, organized around lecture and tutorial content. most of the senior years, where I tend to focus my own teaching, is in the realm of seminars, which are kind of like extended tutorials, lots of conversation, very little monologic teaching, meaning not as much lecture content, lots of student participation. In my case, lots of student presentations as well. The criteria for application are available widely on the Trent site and on the history site. And I see that I'm already off schedule, so I'm going to tie off with something that might be a little more informative than merely parroting those application criteria, namely, what are we offering you with a history degree? Because if I were a young person trying to figure out what I was going to do next year, this is probably foremost among my questions. History is a humanities discipline. It is not a social science. It actually has much more in common with literature, English literature, philosophy, and other humanities. And one of the reasons for that is that historians are kind of in the business of organizing new knowledge in the form of narratives in history books and other kinds of stories with which you will be familiar. And what historians bring to the classroom and what you will take away from it, apart from the content, which is intrinsically interesting if you like medieval history or you like modern European history, is a skill set that I believe very, very strongly in. That skill set includes the ability to do advanced research, to master the discursive elements, the communication elements of writing, speaking, the development of a kind of confident public persona. I always say that we're teaching history students to think analytically, which is a very cross-discipline and professional kind of skill set. We encourage students to take their work very seriously at every level. And we believe ourselves, and I think our record at Trent demonstrates this to be true, to be training people for bigger and better things even after they complete history degrees at Trent. So I'm always very, very keenly attuned to grooming students for law schools, for graduate schools, for journalism. Any number of our graduates from the history department have gone on to great things in politics, in public admin, in business. It is not a discipline that's erudite in the sense that it's simply unrelated to real life. These are skills that are built into humanities degrees and into history in particular that will see you very well indeed if our experience at Trent has been any great example. So I think I will draw the line there, but again, let me put myself at your disposal. If you have questions today, I'll do my best to answer them, but if you would like to continue any kind of conversation with me offline, I'm very, very easy to find by email on the Trent site. And again, welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Robert. I think that captures the Trent experience very well. I had the opportunity to take a number of cross-listed history courses when I was completing my undergrad in political studies. But for a fresher perspective, I would like to start our question and answer with some experiences from Grace and Andrea and Griffin, who have been generous with their time today. So wanted to start with some questions for our student panel. And I would like to pose my first question to Grace, if that's okay. If you could tell us a little bit about what you love about studying history, and more specifically studying history at Trent University.
There are so many things I love about history at Trent. It's going to take me a while to list them all off, but I think one thing that Robert pointed out very well is that we have a lot of skilled historians in this department, and the connections with the professors that you can create here are very, very important to me, because while this is a big department in terms of the number of professors that we have and the number of courses you can take, it is still a very personal and close-knit department. You get to know your professors on a personal level as early as second year, and possibly even earlier at the Durham campus. I don't know how it runs there. But at Peterborough, as of second year, you are in one-on-one seminars with your peers and your professor, and you are really getting to know these people on a first name basis. It's completely wonderful, and you get opportunities for things like research assistantships, and you also get a lot of one-on-one personal support, and you actually do fall in love with the discipline of history a little bit more. You get into exactly the kinds of things your professors are teaching because they have this passion that they give on to you. I never expected when I came to Trent to fall in love with the history of sexuality in early modern Europe, but I became very, very close with one of our professors in the Peterborough campus who does that exact subject. And I completely fell in love with it. And that's another thing that I completely adore about history at Trent, is that you get into these aspects of history that you didn't even really consider. Of course, there are opportunities to study things like war and to study all of these things that you can read in history books and you get really excited about early on, but you also discover all these little minutiae. Things like the history of sexuality. I have one professor who is very into the history of pregnancy and childbirth. It's these little things that you get into and that you don't necessarily think about, and you get this huge big picture thing. And I think we do a really good job with these types of social and cultural history at Trent, which gives you such a strong background to just understanding humanity. And that's what I love about it.
Oh, Grace, that's incredible. I'm so happy that you are having such a great experience as you come to the end of your undergrad experience. It's so wonderful to hear that. I would like to pose my next question to Andrea, also in her fourth year, also coming to the end of this portion of her academic journey. Could you share a little bit of advice? We have some students who would be on their way, Trent bound students, and some advice for them as they embark upon this part of their journey.
This is one piece of advice I came across relatively early on into my undergrad experience at Trent. And this goes for people who are majoring in history. Definitely follow it up with a minor in another subject, because there's a lot of exchangeable knowledge you can gain from history, such as the elements of critical thinking, close reading, writing skills, etc. That's really going to benefit you in your university career. And you also gain like a lot of the knowledge about your desired historical topics can really apply to other fields of discipline. Like, for example, if your niche is more into like if you're into studying women's history, you could take a crack at the gender and feminist studies courses at Trent U. If you like to study like ancient antiquity period content, you can go for ancient history. If you like to write, go into English literature. That's kind of what I did. I'm actually an English major, but I minored in history because I'm intending on going into education, and I want to teach history as much as I want to teach English. There's a lot of interconnections between these two subjects, and they really play off of each other nicely. And I like that, to be honest. So definitely diversify your studies while you're here, take some new courses, and really see how far-reaching history really is.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective, Andrea. I would like to just echo that Trent is a place where learning on disciplinary boundaries thrives, that you are able to tap into expertise in a range of different areas. I know that I explored it in my undergrad as well, and I think that that's such an important piece of the journey. Griffin, I would like to pose to you a question about also what you love about the program, but maybe if you could think of one of your more memorable experiences throughout your undergrad, if that is something that fits, or if you want to just focus more broadly on something that you loved about studying history at Trent, that would also be okay.
I can give an example from this year. This is my first year having Robert. I've taken a couple classes now with Robert, some with his TA. One of my favorite parts about history in this program is you learn how to have a debate respectfully. And that is such an important tool, like especially in our modern age where people argue as much as they do all online. The ability to challenge one another intellectually and bring in these ideas in the seminar. I found, especially in Robert's class, as I've come into my third year, now I'm in my upper years moving in to these more advanced classes and getting used to seminar. I've just found it's refreshing. It's very refreshing to be able to go in and talk about something that, you've done your reading about and you have your opinion, and someone can have a completely different reading. And that's why we say it's so much like English, right? And it's not just that one answer. It's if you have good reason to have a belief in that and you have something to back it up, you bring that to the table. So that's what I love about Trent. It's the small classroom sizes that allow you to do that. That's ultimately why I picked it for my own learning style. But yeah, I have an experience of why I really love it. It's that ability of having those seminars, and I know that's gonna help me in life, no matter who I'm working with. A boss I'm gonna disagree with a lot, or an employee or a coworker would be it. It's just such a valuable skill.
It's fantastic, Griffin. I think that that's a very important point in increasingly polarized time, being able to respectfully and knowledgeably disagree. That is so wonderful. Saqib, thank you. You've been so incredibly patient. Would we be able to, I would like to open up to questions now, if you would like to pose your question.
I'm interested to study in Trent University.
Yeah.
And I'm from Bangladesh. Could you give me a scholarship about history?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Saqib. There is an admission session, including an international admission session. You can access those are staffed with staff and students throughout the day, so you are able to pop onto those. Griffin, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring attention. The first link that was posted in the chat, that will take you to our website, and right there's a section all for international students, and you'll be able to find email addresses to get you directly in contact with who can best help you there.
Wonderful. Yeah, and there is somebody from International who's able to address some of your questions. I'm sorry that we're not able to address scholarship questions directly in this session, Saqib, but there are folks who would be able to address any of those specifics in those chat sessions that are running right now.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I included a link in the chat about the scholarships and bursaries that you could apply for at Trent University. So if you click on this link that I posted here and read a little more into it, you'll see what you'll be able to qualify for, what are the conditions for application, and all of that will be sorted out. If you have any additional questions, you'd best contact the admissions department. And there is also that same link in the chat.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I did also just want to point anyone else who's attending that there are a number of other resources, including other academic sessions, if you are wanting to explore some of those other disciplinary boundaries, adding minors, etc., and checking out some of those academic experiences, as well as sessions on scholarships, housing, you name it, throughout the day. We are coming close to the end of our session. If you do have any additional, if there's any additional questions from the group, if you would like to populate them into the chat, now is a great time for us to be addressing some of those. And if not, is there any final words of wisdom from our wonderful panel today?
Don't worry too much. If you're in the program, it's because you like history, I assume. So, this is your opportunity to explore so many avenues. Part of your degree requirements will be taking at least one credit in different areas of history, including in Europe, before the 1800s and after the 1800s. So just really embrace that, like we were kind of talking about before. You don't have to do all of your classes in those, but this is your opportunity to see what you like, as Grace was kind of saying before, right?
Awesome. Grace, do you want to add something in there?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And what I would add to it is the fact that you don't need to feel pressured right away to know what you want to do. Part of the Trent experience is learning what you love in those first few years and being able to focus later on. I came to Trent with no idea what I wanted to do. I got asked so many times, what period of history am I interested in? And I couldn't handle those kind of questions because I loved it all. But after a couple of years, I really did find my niche. I do like late medieval, early modern history, and it took me a while to figure out that that's what I love. But now that I know that and I do that, it's given me so many different perspectives from all of the different fields of history that I've interacted with. And now I've got a broader perspective that lets me focus in on what I love.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Andrea.
My final piece of advice is don't be afraid to speak up. Us history students are some of the least judgmental people you will ever come across. I mean, we all have this idea that university is like this really elite place and everybody is just a total snob, but that's absolutely not the case here. Like, if you have time, definitely talk to your professors in their downtime, join their office hours, get to know other like-minded students at this university, and you'll come to realize that we're all a really cool bunch of people. We're cool.
I think we're cool. Definitely. Thank you so much. I want to take a moment to thank our wonderful panel for being here with us today and sharing their knowledge. And yes, Sandra Brown, yes, history is cool. It sure is. So this session is being recorded. It will be posted to our open house webpage if you want to review later, or as Robert had mentioned, if you wanted to tap any of your friends and connections into pursuing history at Trent. I also want to echo Griffin's point about you don't necessarily need to choose right away. You are able to enter Trent as a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science student and define your degree path a little later in your journey. I would like to welcome all of you to come and check out Trent in person if you have not yet had an opportunity to explore our wonderful campuses in Durham and in Peterborough. There will be lots of in-person tours taking place over the March break, which I know is fast approaching, and I'm sure that there's lots of folks who are enthusiastic to push out from behind their desks and computers and come and join us on campus. And then we will also be bringing back in-person open house sessions in April and early May at both campuses. Robert, would you like the final word? No pressure.
Yeah, I'm going to take a final word. Thank you, Kara. I really like the students' emphasis on lack of snobbery. That strikes me as a very, very nice tone to leave with. At the risk of sounding like a snob, the world is a very complicated place, as we've learned over the last week or two. History gets history has a tough time selling itself, but all of a sudden it feels very, very relevant. So if you're a person looking out at the world, in particular at the events in Ukraine and elsewhere, think carefully about wetting your whistle with some history courses, maybe with a history minor, if not a major. We're living in history again in a very material way, and it's a very, very good time to sign up.
Agreed. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Robert, for the final word. And thank you so much to everyone who has joined this session. I hope that you enjoy the rest of Virtual Open House and the sessions that are remaining this afternoon. Take care and be well, and we hope to see you on campus very soon.